Okay, and for the sake of the recording, this is the quarterly video meeting of the migration maintainers. I'm Benji Fisher. You're supposed to introduce yourselves at this point.
Oh, I thought we were just supposed to in unison say, "Hi, Benji," and then you kept going.
Hi, I'm Benji. I'm a migration maintainer.
Hi, Benji.
Hi, Benji.
All right, we also have Michael Lutz and Quiet One here. Um, I spent a little time just yesterday, um, writing down a few agenda items. And maybe I'll share my screen. Give me a minute to find the right window. Yeah, this one. And so three topics that I put on here. Converting source plugins from annotations to attributes. Second, deprecating the migrate Drupal module and also migrate Drupal UI.
Mhm.
And third, editing migrations in the admin UI. Um, Anything you want to add to the agenda before going into details?
That works for me right now.
Hmm.
Yeah, so on number one, we're in a pretty good place. We converted from annotations to attributes a while ago, and then in the course of the follow-up issue, which was to move the source module property from the migrate module to the migrate Drupal module, which ended up being just taking it out of the attribute class for the new attribute class for the migrate module. We realized that that it would be problematic to do the obvious thing. The obvious thing would be to have an attribute class in migrate Drupal that extends the attribute class in migrate and adds back the source module property. So that's hard for weird technical issues. I think that Godot is late tried to explain this to me earlier, and I didn't quite get it. Mike was always in favor of not upgrading the migrate Drupal source plugins to attributes, just leaving them alone, and that's what we ended up doing. So there was a bit of churn between the two that we converted them all to attributes and then we converted them all back. The net result is what Mike and Godot's late had in mind from the start. But we managed to do that before the attribute class made it into an actual release. So we don't have to worry about backwards compatibility. We're not changing
Yes.
something that has been released. So we're in pretty good shape for 11.2.0 to be released in a month and a half or so.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I wonder if there are other follow-ups that we should try to get done before then. And like there's, what are these other properties that plugins have? Like there's the destination module. Is that still in there?
Yeah, I think it's still there. No.
So
Is
like
it?
I opened this issue and you can tell from the color that it's we haven't done any work on it yet, but the minimum version and the requirements met properties are still in the source plugin. I think they're only used by the migrate Drupal module, so I think they're sort of in the same situation as the source module attributes, and maybe we should remove them as well.
The difference between them is that the source module and the destination module stuff was for migrate Drupal UI, whereas the
Okay.
other ones were pre-existing. So the source module could do anything it wanted with those.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care if we remove them because they don't do anything in the core plugins. But I wouldn't consider it's not like the priority like source module was going to be an issue because that's specifically Drupal 7. We're trying to get, or 7, 6, and 7. We're trying to get that stuff out. Requirements met, and the minimum version is a generic thing. Something uses requirements met at least in a test. I don't remember what, or maybe it was like the fakes, the fake source or something. I don't remember now, but not not anything important. And I don't think anything really uses minimum version in core. Those were there so that if you were building your own set of sources, we could use them. I don't think they're useful. I've built sets of sources for all sorts of, systems other than Drupal, and I've never once cared to use them. Um, but that doesn't mean I've hit every possible use case.
So
So it's
basically,
not,
they're
it doesn't hurt anything to have them, but I don't know that they do much of anything. That like the only real reference to them is in the annotation class, and like nothing else does anything with them.
right, and that annotation does explicitly say that the source plugin itself determines how the value is used.
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
so basically,
yeah, I
they're
think
harmless, maybe not worth the effort, or not worth worrying my little head over it.
I agree. There's
Well,
bigger
I mean,
things to do, in
yeah,
my opinion.
yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like but always get rid of them later. They're not tied to getting Drupal 7 stuff and migrate Drupal stuff like 4 at all. They're just a thing that somebody thought might be useful, and maybe it wasn't Drupal 7, but really use, as far as I know. Anyway. I don't know of any contrib stuff that does it. Custom code might, but I've never seen any reference to it in any tutorials and documentation. So I doubt anybody but the three of us know they exist.
Okay. Um, then let's turn the page on that one. And the second item in the agenda is deprecating migrate Drupal. And again, we've made some good progress. We've moved the content entity source plugin from migrate Drupal to Drupal. And we've sort of moved the D8 config source plugin. We actually added a new plugin for for two or three good reasons. One, the new plugin is called config entity, so it's analogous to the content entity and no longer has this archaic D8 in
Yes.
the plugin
Yeah.
name. Second, the old one, the D8 config, actually extended Drupal SQL base for no good reason. And the new one just extends SQL
Mm,
base.
right.
Um, so we left the old ones
Good.
behind and added deprecation messages to them.
Okay.
Um, and I think now that those two are moved, I can't think of a reason why you would need the migrate Drupal module enabled unless you're actually doing a migration from Drupal 6 or Drupal 7.
Good. That's the way it should have always been.
So at this point, we have this plan issue, the tasks to deprecate migrate Drupal. Um, move destination module from migrate to migrate Drupal. Maybe that can just be closed as won't fix or obsolete or whatever. The destination module. I think one of these is probably supposed to say source module. are needed for Drupal and should not be in migrate. I don't know where destination module is at all. Um, it's certainly not in this attribute class, right?
It should. I thought it was next to where source module was, the same place. Well, in the destination, of course. But
Anyway, um, I, I think that one is obsolete. Um, but I'm not in favor of making changes during a live meeting because I might be missing something. Anyway, these two are two of the two issues that I just mentioned. Um,
destination module is in. Oh, it's in the migrate destination in the annotation. So it must be in the attribute as well in the migrate module.
ah, that's right.
But that's another one where, like, I don't think it's really used, but it doesn't much matter if it stays. And the destination module is referring to the Drupal 10, 11, 12, whatever module, not anything V7. So it's not,
Yeah, it's a
again,
bit different, isn't it?
It's not migrate Drupal related. If anything, if someone used it, could be relevant uh, to any migrating from anything because it's talking about the destination, which is definitely still likely going to be Drupal. I guess not technically. It could still be useful.
Yeah,
Either way, like it might be another one like the other two where we could probably just get rid of it, but not a blocker for getting rid of it.
agreed. So what do we want to do with the issue, though? Do we want to leave it open? Or do we want to just say, no, we're not going to bother with this? It's a won't fix?
Yeah, let's make it a won't fix. Like there are enough issues out there. We don't need to clutter up issue space with issues that we don't plan to fix.
You know, always reopen it.
Yeah, I'm of that category too. We could just
Yeah.
make, as long, I can comment about that after the meeting. Oops. I'll close that one.
Thank you. So deprecate source plugins for legacy Drupal. Um, I think this one's marked as postponed, and maybe we can unpostpone it at this point.
Did I miss about moving the source plugins to attributes though? Because they're not yet, right?
They are. That was
Yeah.
item number one in
Oh,
the agenda.
I missed. Good. Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they have been for a while, but we just the other week got committed to converting all of them, all of the ones in core back to attribute or back to attributes so that
Back to
they could have their
annotations.
source
That's
back
right.
to
So right now
annotations.
they're
Sorry.
annotations, right?
Everything that extends migrate Drupal
Drupal
SQL
SQL.
base. Everything that extends Drupal SQL base is still using annotations.
But the other ones aren't, and they aren't right.
Right.
Not that there aren't other ones.
Lucas,
Gotcha.
welcome.
Anything
Yeah.
that's getting deprecated, well, anything that uses source module is still annotations, but everything that uses source module is getting deprecated, so it's fine.
Fine. Yeah, I missed that detail. Sorry, guys.
Cool. So these two issues, the first and third, are now fixed. We're going to close this one as won't fix. So once we do that, we can also unpostpone this issue.
Yep.
And, I think once we deprecate Drupal SQL base, anything that extends it is automatically deprecated too, right?
That's the idea. So we don't have to
Correct.
deprecate every single one of them. Otherwise, we
Yeah.
go mad with grunt work.
And then Oh, field plugins. I still have only a vague idea of how a field plugin works. Um, and I guess the field plugins are sort of a migrate Drupal construct. I know
100.
that much.
Yeah, 100%.
We definitely need to go.
So we should be able to do the same thing there, deal with the field manager, the the plugin manager for that.
Yeah, throw a definition line in there. So it's a plugin, so we don't have to do implementation.
Your audio is a little choppy,
Or
Mike.
Saturday seems to be going on earbuds.
Source and field. The process plugins, though, aren't like that. We can't deprecate the manager. We have to get rid of the ones we, and each one individually, which will probably be all the ones that aren't in migrate module. I haven't looked to see how many there are.
Yeah, I made a list at one point. Um, yeah. Source plugins. No, not source plugins. Process plugins. List of migrate and process plugins from contrib modules. So maybe this is the right page. I think it's been rearranged since I first started it. Yeah, here's the section of plugins provided by the core migrate module. If we removed it in 9.0x, we should remove it from this documentation page. And here are the process plugins provided by other core modules. So most or all of these should be deprecated.
Yeah, there's 78 of them by my list.
Okay.
The good news on these too, though, these are a lower priority than other things around because these are all the plugin manager for process plugins is in migrate, so like they could be there with migrate Drupal gone, and we missed one, or if we decided in sometime in Drupal 12 we wanted to deprecate and remove something, we could. So these aren't a blocker for marking migrate Drupal obsolete. We should still pick and choose and make some common sense decisions here.
Also, once you have one set up, a novice could do the deprecating work for all the others.
Yeah, I think
Back to the
I've
field plugins, though,
yep.
that won't even be triggered once migrate Drupal. Like they're already going to hear from migrate Drupal. We have to do all the work, but it's like impossible for it to ever even be triggered without migrate Drupal.
Yeah, if migrate Drupal was gone, it would just be dead code.
Exactly. So we got to do like the extra shouting, but maybe we don't.
That's a good point.
Well, we want to remove dead code from Drupal core, but if we miss something, no one's
Well,
gonna.
I'm just thinking work for people. How is there a way to just put it in the plugin manager? Like if the plugin manager gets executed, regardless of the individual YAMLs or implementations or classes or anything, like one place to change the code versus
Yeah,
hundreds of places.
well, you can trigger the error in the plugin manager, but you still need to add the deprecated annotation to the doc block, probably.
everywhere.
For the classes, yeah.
Why? If we're not going to do that for source plugins, why would we have to do it for field plugins?
Because the source plugins all extend Drupal SQL base.
Do the field plugins to extend a single thingy, or do
Ah,
they just implement an interface?
that's a good question.
No, they definitely extend a base because most of them, there's like 6 methods they can override, and most of them only override one.
Yeah.
So if we
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we can
deprecate,
do that, I'd have to look. I haven't seen the deprecation policy that lets us do that from a
can we
base class
deprecate
without.
the can we deprecate the interface?
I
Yeah,
don't.
we can deprecate interfaces. Yeah.
Because the whole baby
Field plugin
bathwater
base.
and everything goes away.
I don't see how you can effectively deprecate an interface. You want to be able to generate
Mhm.
deprecation notices, trigger errors at some point, and I
Well,
don't
yeah,
see
but
how.
you do it in the. That's what the annotation's for, because Symfony's test classes will do a scan, and if it detects a deprecation in the interface, it will scan every class in the class loader, and if it implements the interface, it'll trigger the error.
And I don't
A
want
lot
to
of
get
that
into the
stuff's
nitty gritty. I was just suggesting that that one's very ripe for trying to make it easier than trying to update 78 different locations or something.
yeah. Well, I got to look because the policies have changed, and maybe there's some different ways to do it. The point of the trigger error is it spits out uh, an error during test runs to tell you there's a deprecation. The reason that we put it in the annotations is because that's picked up by PHP stand, so that can trigger or can tell you where your deprecations are, and so that's why we've always done both. But given that both of those are now pretty thorough, there may have been some policy change where we don't have to necessarily do both in certain cases.
If we
Um,
do it for PHP stand with the interface and runtime execution through the plugin manager, we've handled both.
yeah,
Ex-
quite, yeah,
Except
yeah,
the
because
edge
that'll
case
trigger.
where someone extends the class and then
They're
they
going to get it from the
instantiate it.
interface.
Yeah,
They're going to get it from the interface then.
Well, they won't get a runtime error from the interface. They'll only
They'll get
get
that from the
get it
plugin
from.
manager.
yeah.
Well, it's possible to instantiate a class without the plugin manager.
If they're doing that, then they're on their own.
Well, I mean, we're sitting here guessing
I
right now,
know.
real time. I mean, I can go take a look and double check and see what the new policies are in 5 minutes when we're offline. So, I
But
mean, we'll just do whatever's got to get done.
I
But
happen to know some reasonable folks. I mean, they're reasonable too.
yeah,
It's
yeah, I
just
think you're probably
dead
right.
code. And I don't want to have even novice developers spend 20 minutes because that's still a non-novice developer doing code reviews and merges um, and try to keep
well,
everyone productive.
I don't want to do anything we don't have to do.
Yeah.
I just need to go, like I said, double check the updated policy and see if it's changed. It very well has, because it's been a couple of years since I've done major swaths of deprecations. So we update it regularly.
So I completely derailed that.
That's right. We're all in agreement. We're going to deprecate all the stuff by changing as few lines of code as we're allowed to,
Okay.
and as few lines of code as we can get by the committers. And we've come up with all the ideas that we're going to make sure we can do and then do.
The next one on the list is the destinations that we haven't discussed.
Well, destinations are all when you migrate Drupal specific destination plugins, right?
I haven't looked at all the destinations, but I would assume that's the case. But you never know.
Well, the destination plugins are plugins for the modern Drupal side, so
I don't
I
There's,
think,
would say that I would say those are all valid.
yeah, Migrate Drupal doesn't have any destination plugins itself. Um,
And it shouldn't. It all should be in migrate.
right.
Mhm. Or in the modules.
Right. And I think most of them should stick around.
well,
Absolutely.
I
I'm
have.
just wondering if there are some exceptions that none of us
I
are
just.
thinking of.
I just. There is one. There's one for D7 theme settings in the system module.
Mm.
That would be an exception.
There's probably some cleanup in the user destination. I feel around password handling from Drupal 7 with
Oh,
PHP
Yeah, that
pass.
too.
that's true. Okay.
So that would be in the user module, I guess. That would be something that extends content entity.
Sorry, Benji. What one
Uh,
was that?
yeah, user has its own destination.
Mhm.
So we could at least have a
So
look.
yeah. So the issue should list all the ones that aren't in migrate, and would just tick them off that somebody's looked at them and said, yeah, it's not needed or it needs to be adjusted or something.
Mm.
There's fortunately not that many of them.
Well, there's also user and comment both have their own migration plugin class
That's
um, that we might not need anymore
probably,
either.
I don't actually see it in the destination for user.
Not in the destination. It's got its own migration plugin class that overrides the regular migration.php. User and comment both have one that um,
Trying to find where it is
sets
though.
resets processes. It just be in the plugin directory.
It's
Would be.
not for user.
We'll look at the comment one for a second.
Did we get rid of?
Hey, wrong one. Not user did. I know comment does.
Comment has a special field. No, it's a field
Did
one.
comment get moved out of core yet?
Nope, still there. So what,
Comment has the one that extends the field migration. That's all. It's unusual.
There's some things around MD5 passwords
Yeah.
that in users destination that can maybe some cleanup, but maybe someone has MD5 passwords from WordPress. I don't know.
Yeah, the user source plugin migrate directory, user.php. That's the user migration plugin that extends field migration too. Comment and user both have
Yeah, comment has that as well.
special, have field migration plugins that are Drupal 7. Those need to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, probably the profile values migration class too, because that's for profiles. It's D7.
Oh, oh, it's cold. Oh.
Oh, come visit. It's cold? No. It might have been 38 or 9 today.
Well, and I should
Finally
say it's
warming
as
up.
cold as it should be. It should be much colder. Mm.
We finally hit 80 today. And summer is almost here.
So for Lucas's sake, let's go back to the agenda for today's meeting. So converting source plugins from annotations to attributes, it's done. Um, Deprecating migrate Drupal and migrate Drupal UI, which is what we've been talking about. The progress for that is that we did move content entity and config entity out of migrate Drupal and into migrate. So I can't think of any reason that you'd need to leave migrate Drupal enabled unless you're actually doing a Drupal 6 or 7 migration. So that clears the way for the things we've been talking about.
Yep.
So we'll do some follow-up individually after the meeting. Maybe at least start cataloging the destination and field plugins so that we know what has to be looked at and figure out what the easiest way to get them all deprecated is. But shall we move? Can we move on to the third agenda point or?
Mm-hmm.
So editing migrations in the admin UI. So a few months ago, I added a recipe to import from a CSV file, and it used a couple of modules that Lucas maintains, the migrate source UI and migrate source CSV. And I realized when I made that recipe that there's a big thing missing, which is that there is no good way to edit a migration in the admin UI. And as Mike was quick to point out, there is a way, assuming that you're using Migrate Plus, and you can export and import any configuration from the admin UI. So you can edit your migrations that way, but that's not a good way. So, um, if Drupal is supposed to be targeting ambitious site builders, we have to give them a good way to edit migrations. And so work has begun on that. There's this new module in development, does not yet have an alpha release, but I think it's close. The modeler API, and basically what it does is it pulls out of the ECA module everything that talks to the front end editing framework. And so that will not solve the problem, but that will give us a tool we can use to provide an editing interface that looks like the editing interface that people have been using for a few years now with ECA. So we need to get that into alpha, and then we need to figure out how to make it work for editing migration config objects or migrate plus dot migration dot anything config objects. But I think that we've got a path forward that'll work.
Nice.
That sounds interesting. Being able to do that from the UI.
How
Yeah,
do
have
you,
you
how do the three of you guys all know each other as maintainers of that project?
um so I have I never met Jürgen Haas until DrupalCon last month. Yeah, last month. But I posted a comment on the ECA Slack channel asking how hard would it be that basically what the UI component of the ECA module is doing is it's saving config entities. And these are the config entities defined by the ECA module. Um, and once you have the config entity, you can run your site without the UI, just as you can disable Vue's UI, you can disable ECA UI. So how hard would it be to edit other configuration? Um, and I think at just about the same time, uh, some of the people working on the AI modules were asking very similar questions. So it's just an idea whose time had come. Um, and so, Jürgen, to his credit, was very enthusiastic about it from the start. He recognizes that sort of pulling this out into its own module will be better decoupling. It leads to better structure for the ECA module. So he jumped right in, and and we've done a lot of work. Chris Weber, Cosmic Dreams, I've known for a few years. I met him at some DrupalCon a long time ago. Um,
Mid camp. He goes to mid camp a lot.
yep. And I guess I was actually at Florida Drupal camp, so this was late February when I posted that question to the ECA Slack channel. And the next day, Chris was talking about how he's long had a dream of being able to see a migration in progress with some sort of graphical interface. And I think that the tools that the ECA module gives you are sort of ideal for that. If you've never seen what the editing interface looks like, probably the documentation site is a good place.
Okay.
Example models somewhere around here. You can, well, I'm sorry, I can't find an easy example, but um, maybe
Yep.
under resources. Here we go. Somewhere in here, there's maybe it's part 2. There's a nice screenshot. Here we go. This is what an ECA model looks like, and I'm just imagining a pipe,
Hmm.
a row like this for each process pipeline. So instead of just having one starting point, I'm thinking we'll have one starting point for each field. But definitely to be determined.
Wow, that is intriguing.
And then you can just click on one of these things and this little editing thing here pops up. You can expand these things and you can configure thing here. So each one of these could be a process plugin and you could fill in its configuration.
One
That's
of one of the things I've been working on for some time, as in not working, but it's been an issue, is the configurable plugins. Um, because being able to get the metadata for the process there on the right
yes, yes.
is a bear unless every configurable plugin has a wrapper class around it.
Well,
Um,
I worked on that issue in the last month or so, and it's
I
RTD
know.
fine.
Is it where's the configurable plugin? Is it an interface?
An
Create a
interface,
trait. There you go.
trait in the base class.
Did that finally land?
Didn't land, but it's RTBC.
Okay, so I will paste it, I guess, in our Slack here. Our Zoom team
That's right.
chat.
It's in the plugin system. It's not in the
Yeah,
migrate, and it should be RTBC. There we go. Yeah, but I think this is not enough.
it's not, but it was kind of one of those things that,
Feeds
well,
migrate team really
started.
wanted it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, the other pieces of like type the inputs and outputs to process plugins and things like that that would really let you kind of lock down, build an
Typed,
interface, put up
like a
metadata.
type data type thing.
Yeah.
I was thinking not in terms of typed data, but in terms of validatable configuration.
Isn't that typed data?
Well, it is, but for validatable configuration, I mean, or migrations is config is all migrate plus. I mean, we just need to make sure that they are validatable in the module in the contrib module. We don't have to do anything in core for that.
Um, the configuration I'm thinking of is not the migration plugin itself as as Migrate Plus configuration. I'm thinking of the configuration of a process plugin.
Right, right. So if we have this configurable thing, we can then call get default configuration or whatever is the
Mhm.
method, default configuration. And then we can get some default values and at least have something, right? We can do it as string test to see if the default value is a string and then put a input box. Or if it's something else, I don't know, put in a text field with
Yeah.
multiple so that you can, but otherwise you're stuck with like 500 wrapper classes that provide all this metadata for the process plugins. Think about
Yeah.
some of
So
your DOM plugins or whatever's. They all need to be configured, and we need a way to expose what are the toggles.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this will be a start, and we did it this way because we can just have plugin base or process plugin base extend this new configurable plugin base instead of instead of extending instead of extending plugin base, and it'll just automatically get applied to all subclasses. It's not enough though, because all it really does is it's just a way to set get and get defaults for configuration. The next thing we should probably look into, because we started this a long, long, long time ago, long before we were even thinking about attributes, is maybe setting up some more attributes for process plugins that'll, you know, allow us to define what the configuration is in a structured way that a system like this could use.
That would be nifty. I like that.
Yeah. List, define its configuration or define its configuration. I mean, you could even leverage the uh, probably in some way leverage the config validation stuff and type data and all of that for to define validation rules. And it'd be great if we could even give it like expected types for output and input so that you could validate the two processes next to each other, that one is outputting something the other one can take in,
Use
you
some
know.
fancy things like enums to provide allowed
Yeah.
values, right?
Yeah, I mean
Benji, was
it's a
this where you
lot, but
thinking this would go, or
What Mike is saying is pretty close to what I had in mind. I was thinking of adding a validatable configurable interface on top of the configurable interface. But yeah,
that would work too.
I think it could also work with new attributes. But I was definitely thinking of leveraging the validatable configuration. Like basically, um, I, I I think you'd have to define a config entity type for every plugin, and or well,
Ooh,
one type could possibly be used for multiple plugins. But then each plugin would say, here's my config entity type.
is that
Um,
because of ECA, VCA?
no,
That's an
uh,
Would these be simple config items?
yes.
Okay.
I mean, for SQL base, like you've got like 4 or 5 possible keys, which between them determine what your source database is. Um, and for process plugin like string replace
Mhm.
or you've got the search string and the replace string and whether it should be treated as regular expression and whether it should be case insensitive, right? So again like 4 or 5 values, booleans and strings.
It does seem like that'd be slicker to do with something with attributes, though.
So are you still thinking that the attribute is a verb and attribute is a noun? Please.
Attributes,
But
fine. Mhm.
are you saying that the attribute would specify a config type, or the attribute would actually have the validation information in it?
Well, it'd be, I don't know. It's only half thought out in my brain, but I was just thinking if you had an attribute class that you could just add to any configure, once this configurable plugin thing goes in, you could add in that would define, what would it take? It'd be an array of um, properties. Each property, you could even have a set of classes that represented different validation setups, and you just, as part of the attributes, you'd have an array in there that defined your configuration option, their data type, and any validation constraints.
I feel like we're already doing that somewhere, but I don't remember where. With validation equals within attributes. Is it
And
with,
that,
it's not with Q. Where is it that we're already doing validation?
Using attributes. Huh, I don't know.
Yeah.
it seems like it'd be this, because then you could put it all right in the process plugin file in an attribute.
We're doing that with
Should-
constraints on field types.
Yeah.
There you go. Prior art.
Constraints on field types. So if I look at core modules
Look at file item
file item, where what?
underneath the file class, file module.
So the file module, file, and then source
Source
plugin field
plugins
type
field type. Yep.
and file item.
Yeah.
Category, default widget, default formatter, constraints. Oh, so is it this constraints attribute that you're
Yes.
talking about? And then,
This lets you do things like configurable file validation to make sure that your file that you're uploading has a txt extension, or you have access to whatever file you're trying to reference.
okay.
I gotta duck out, guys. I gotta go get dinner ready and other stuff.
Yep. And the hour is up. I think this will be fun.
As long as it's fun, that's what matters.
And yeah, it'll be a really
I'm
nice feature.
convinced.
Mike, do you have a job yet?
Not yet. Talking with a few companies right now.
Okay.
I enjoyed this vacation, but I'm ready for it to end.
No,
No,
Best wishes with your job hunting.
definitely.
thank you. I'll find something soon, I'm sure.
Okay, shall we call it a meeting then?
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you guys. Good to get in touch. Good to speak again. Always
Yeah.
is.
Sorry I joined late.
No problem.
We should
Okay.
stop the recording.
Well, he can edit it out.
Oh, yeah, I suppose. Wanted to hear how Vicky and Benji were doing.
Well, you got in late for that.
Okay,
that.
sorry. Ah, okay. Well, I'll be on time next time. Okay.
Maybe Benji can share with you the whole video.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure I'll get the video. Okay.
Yeah.
All
So,
right.
Okay. See you, Mike.
Hey guys, catch up with you later. See you in Slack.
bye-bye.
Kakatiano. Bye bye. Where's the. That's the button I'm looking for.